outside? Should I run and hide? How do I take my company worldwide? Do you love the law? Did you watch Hee-Haw? What's the weirdest thing that you ever saw? What's it like in court? Favorite sport? Can you help with my book report? Is my hair too long? Am I right or wrong? And do you mind if I sing along to anything? Ask Alan anything in the world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Ask Alan, the podcast. I'm Alan Crone, the CEO of the Crone Law Firm, and I have with me today as my guest a great servant of the city of Memphis, Mr. George Abbott. George, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great. It's great to be with you, Alan. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you for doing it. Many of our listeners and watchers, viewers may recognize George as the one of the faces of the Memphis Riverfront Partnership, Parks Partnership, or the Partnership for short. And he's the one who, whenever something great happens on the riverfront, he's out there talking about it. George, I know that you're not a native Memphian.
I am not. I moved to Memphis about 5 years ago to be a part of this project. I've been living in Miami, working for a foundation and working on public space projects all across the country. And I had the chance to visit Memphis a couple of times to see the riverfront. And it always kind of stuck out to me. First time I came was back in 2013, I believe. And it always stuck out to me how magnificent the river was and how much potential there seemed to be on the riverfront. And so I was really excited to have the chance to move to Memphis. I swapped South Beach for the banks of the Mississippi, so very similar to each other, and to make this great project happen, just because I believe that what we're doing on the riverfront will have a huge catalytic effect for Memphis, for the city, for downtown, the neighboring surrounding neighborhoods. And I think it's obvious to everybody the kind of the pace of progress. But 5 years, Memphis looks very different today than it looked 5 years ago. 5 years from today, it will look very different from it does today, in a positive direction, I believe. So that's why I came, and I'm so happy to be here. And just less than 100 days from the opening of Tomley Park.
How did you get into this avocation of public policy, public engagement?
That's a really good question. And my route to this work has been somewhat circuitous. I actually, I studied languages because I really liked talking to people. I then went on to do a little bit of work in politics. I worked on the field team for a presidential candidate, which I recommend to everybody I meet, every young person I meet. I say, take the opportunity to do some campaign work, because, you get thrown into the fire, and you get, if you take the chances you get given, you can do things that far exceed your age or experience level, just because there's so much work to do and not enough people to do it. So in the campaign world, my first real job, I was managing a team of, a couple hundred volunteers, which was kind of crazy. And then it was from there, I was lucky enough to have the chance to then work in an arts-focused nonprofit that invested in arts as a means to improve neighborhoods, and then moved to the foundation, which is where I really got familiar with projects all across the country. And then finally end up here in Memphis. And I've been lucky enough to have a great mentor in Carol, who has been able to introduce me to a lot of people, teach me a lot of things. And it's really exciting to see the fruits of that labor now manifesting here on the riverfront.
I think many of our listeners are familiar with the partnership, but for those who aren't, give us a quick summary of what the partnership's mission is and what your role is in accomplishing that mission.
Yeah, so we are a nonprofit affiliated with the city of Memphis. We manage, maintain, activate, invest in, improve about 5 miles of the riverfront parks here in Memphis. So similar organizational structure to something like the Overton Park Conservancy or Shelby Farms Park Conservancy, in that the land we manage belongs to the city, it's city land, but we have a contract with the city to do all of the things that we do on that land. The reason for being so to speak is because we're able to access sources of funding that city might not have access to, able to operate in a slightly different way, recognizing the importance of these spaces, these public spaces, to the city as a whole. So it's a true public-private partnership, which comes with a lot of opportunities, some challenges, but on the whole, at its most basic level, our goal is to deliver value for the city of Memphis and for the people of Memphis, and we work very hard to do that every day.
Well, I know that y'all are working on the Tom Lee Park renovation, but let's kind of ease into that, because there's some other things that that the partnership has been a part of that are in their own right are really transformative. And one of those would be the Riverside Garden Park. Can you talk a little bit about that park? And people may not know exactly where it is.
Sure. Obviously, like you say, Tom Lee Park is the project that gets all the headlines. But we actually started at River Garden, which is between Court and Jefferson on the west side of Riverside Drive. So it's a small park very close to the Tennessee Visitor Center. If you've ever visited the pyramid, if you've gone to Bass Pro, as you go into Bass Pro Drive from Riverside Drive, River Garden is right there on your left-hand side. And in many ways, that small park, it's a couple of acres, was kind of a test case for Tom Lee. So we took, it was essentially an open field with about 4 trees in it and one pathway that surrounded the park. We invested a couple $1 million as a result of a grant from a national organization called Reimagining the Civic Commons to take that park and add play structures, a food and drink pavilion, a place to sell food and drink, as well as a place to enjoy food and drink, a covered space. We added native meadow plantings around the entire site, planted a bunch of trees, added a kayak rack that we use to operate kayak rentals in the harbor. And many of those same techniques you'll find in Tom Lee Park, but River Garden we completed that in 2018. So it was the first project that we completed, and almost immediately we saw the impact of that investment. So we measured the visitorship to that park pre-transformation, and it was pretty slow. There wasn't a whole lot of reason to go there. And pretty much immediately, it became one of the most popular and active parts of the riverfront, which was really great to see. And even more so, once you started diving into who those people actually were, we found that it wasn't just people from downtown. It wasn't just people who could walk to this park. It was really representative of the entire city. You had pretty much every zip code in the city represented in this park. And so it gave us a lot of confidence that, make a beautiful place, people will come to enjoy it, and people will come from far and wide. It was also very important to do that first, because we've now been maintaining that park for the past 4 years. So our staff have a level of familiarity with things like native meadow plantings that hadn't really been seen before on the riverfront, but there's a lot of them in Tom Lee Park. So the staff have learned how to maintain those types of areas and now they can apply that to a much larger footprint at Tom Lee.
And there are all kinds of different activations that are going on down there. I know one that's very popular is yoga.
Yep.
And, you know, you can see literally dozens of people at each class. What other kind of activations are occurring at the park?
So yoga, when it first started, you could see dozens of people. Yoga today, and it's every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. You'll see hundreds of people there. You know, so it is pretty consistently 400 plus people turning up to that park every Tuesday evening to do yoga. And it's amazing to see who these people are. When you survey them, you find out that they are from all over the place. You know, you have people who work in Mississippi who will take their yoga stuff to work, pack up after work, and get to downtown Memphis by 6 o'clock for that yoga class. And it's incredible. So yoga is very popular, happens roughly April to October every Tuesday night. We just this summer started doing Tai Chi. So Monday nights we have Tai Chi, again, so, you know, a kind of calm activity to take place there. We periodically will host skate night. So this summer, every Thursday, and this is on Riverside Drive outside of the park, but every Thursday we'll have skates available and a DJ and a skate dance party, which is a lot of fun. When the weather gets a little cooler, we do have fire pits that are in that park that we bring to that park. And so every December, we do Fire Pit Fridays. So every Friday night, you'll have free s'mores available, and you come down and roast them on a fire pit with your family, you meet some new friends. And there has been all sorts of one-off events that have happened in that park, from craft markets to Clean Memphis hosted there, a food festival there a couple of years ago. We've had dance classes in there. When the cobblestone construction is complete, you'll again be able to access the harbor and take out kayaks for rent from River Garden as well. So it's really a beautiful park. If you haven't had a chance to get down and see it, I would encourage you to do so. Come down, do a yoga class, take Tai Chi on Monday, or just come at some point during the weekend and enjoy the atmosphere there.
Yeah, I wanted you to talk about that because Tom Lee Park is a much bigger undertaking, but it's going to be a multiplication of those kinds of activations, right?
Exactly. We have taken the chance with everything that we've done over the past 5 years. It's all been in the context of what can we learn from this that we can then apply at Tom Lee Park. So, I just told you about a bunch of programs that we do. We've tried a lot of other things, some things that haven't been so successful, but every or not many people have shown up, or it's not the right mix of people, or whatever it may be. But we learn from that every time so that we can then take all of those lessons and put them into practice at Tom Lee Park. And one of my favorite events that we've started over the past couple of years, just up the hill from River Garden at a place called Fourth Bluff Park, is the Grizzlies watch parties. And, it's a pretty simple idea. We all love the Grizzlies. Let's get a big screen up and let's watch the Grizzlies together. And that, was very popular when it started, but has expanded over the course of the 3 years we've been doing it. I think the first one we maybe had 300, 400 people turn up. This past summer, this past season, we would regularly get 2,500, 3,000, sometimes even 4,000 people to one of those watch parties. So not only do we learn what works and what doesn't work, we learn how to do what works better, so that it serves more people. And we're going to have to put all of that learning to bear in Tom Lee Park, because it is such a much larger footprint, but it also comes with amazing facilities. If you haven't had a chance to check out Tom Lee Park, visit the website at tomleepark.org, and you'll see some pictures of what the park looks like. But it's a beautiful space with wonderful facilities, a fantastic playground, permanent food and drink stands, lots of open space for big, for large events, concerts, sports, things that need open field, shade, trees. And, we expect to move some of those programs to Tom Lee and expect to see them keep getting bigger and bigger as we iterate and learn each time.
What would you say to the naysayers who complain that Tom Lee Park was just fine, we really didn't need to make these improvements, and it's not going to move the needle on any of the social issues that matter: poverty, economic development, racial harmony, those sorts of things? What would you say to that?
Well, I would say that Tom Lee Park is really an example of Memphis investing in Memphis. The great cities are made great by their sense of community and by the spaces that we all share. And the more places we build that bring us together and can build community, the better. And I think what you saw at Tom Lee previously was a space that it could be active at certain times, especially when there are events on top of that footprint. But oftentimes, on a day like today, where it's 100 degrees outside, you'd find nobody in that park, and then you've got this beautiful piece of land with amazing view of the river that's unusable if it's baking hot outside, which is, we're in Memphis, it's often baking hot outside, and there would be no reason to be there. Why go sit in this blank, flat piece of land? Now with so many more features, with places that you can actually get a drink, go to the bathroom, sit in some shade, it becomes usable all year round. And it becomes an asset that will attract people to visit from further afield, right? In the old version of Tom Lee, if you lived in Midtown, for example, your reason to come to Tom Lee Park, unless there was an event happening, is just to look at the river. Well, how long does that take? You look at the river, 10 minutes, you're done. Or maybe you never even got out of your car. You just looked at it because you had a perfectly fine. If you wanted to sit on a piece of grass, there's a piece of grass in your neighborhood or your backyard. Now you've got features that will say, oh, what do we want to do today? Well, let's go to Tom Lee because I know that there's an event going on, or I know that I can, or my kids really want to play in the playground, or my kid went on a field trip there last week, and now we want to go back and see some of the plants and animals that they learned about. So it's a much more diverse landscape. It now truly lives up to the power of the river that's beside it. And in a time when, more and more people are able to work from anywhere, lots of companies are going remote, which gives a place like Memphis an opportunity to start attracting some of these people. If you don't need to live in New York to work, you can choose wherever you want to live. And you're going to choose that place you want to live based on quality of life. And Tom Lee Park is a quality of life asset. It's like I took a bunch of realtors through there, and a realtor said to me, this is amazing because it makes downtown living with a family so much more possible. Before, if you had small kids downtown, you didn't have anywhere to take them to play. You got to get in the car to go somewhere with a playground. Well, now you don't have to. And as we think about, okay, we've got to get people to Memphis, we've got to get people to stay in Memphis, and we've got to attract new people to come to Memphis. They're looking for those quality of life features. And to have this right downtown is a huge asset for attracting new people and for encouraging people who are here who may be considering moving away to stay as well. So that was kind of a long answer. I think if I'd maybe workshop that answer a little bit, I might not have the chance to give the full explanation, but that's what I'd say.
Well, no, it's a great answer. And, there are lots of, as you say, there are lots of great features down there. But I want to talk about an effort that the partnership made to connect Tom Lee Park with downtown Memphis. And I know that there are a number of physical connectors that y'all have worked really hard on. Can you talk a little bit about those and why those connectors are important?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because this assets that are connected to one another become so much more accessible and so much more valuable. And if we build a beautiful park that nobody can get to, well, what good was that, right? So we need to make it easy for everybody to reach Tom Lee Park, no matter how they prefer to travel. So one of the biggest, or one of the first pieces of the park to be completed was the Cut Bank Bluff, which is at Vance Avenue. And it took what was one small and pretty steep and intimidating staircase and turned it into a very gently graded, sloping, accessible, ADA compliant ramp feature. So that gives you the first ADA compliant route up and down the bluff. It's a couple blocks away from the new downtown mobility center, which is nearly 1,000 parking spaces. So, if you're coming downtown, you have a place to park, a couple blocks walk, and then you can walk a stroller or a wheelchair or whatever it may be down the bluff easily. So that is a big move for accessibility. We do, of course, have parking alongside the park as well. So there are some limited parking spaces, but Tom Lee Park we don't want people to come just to Tom Lee Park. Tom Lee Park only has that multiplier effect that you mentioned earlier if it becomes a contributor to downtown. If someone says, oh, I'm going to go downtown today, I'll spend the morning in Tom Lee Park, I'll have lunch on South Main, and then maybe in the afternoon, I'll visit a museum, or I'll go hang out on Beale Street, have a couple of beers or something like that. Because then I don't want someone to drive to Tom Lee, walk around the park and get back in their car and go back to where they came from. I'd much rather it be part of a full day of activities. And conversely, if someone, say, comes downtown to go for dinner, why not spend a couple of hours in the park before or after dinner? Let's go check out the sunset in the park, and then we'll walk up onto Main Street and have dinner. Or, oh, we're going to the Grizzlies game tonight. Well, I haven't seen Tom Lee yet, so why don't we stop by there first? It becomes a much more valuable destination when it's connected to the rest of the assets that we have downtown. So Cut Bank Bluff is a big move. We've worked hard as well on the entrances at Beale Street, Butler, Hewling, and at the south end of the park to try and make those visible and accessible. We have added signage throughout downtown that points the way to the riverfront, but there is still more work to do. So we're really grateful to have the partnership of the City and Downtown Memphis Commission in making those gateways to the river visible and enjoyable, making the walk enjoyable and comfortable, adding things like street trees, repairing cracked sidewalks. And it will be a constant effort from all of us to make sure that everything is joined up and easy to travel between the great assets that we do have down here.
Well, I know one of the concerns that has been in the public zeitgeist since we started this, and that is the idea of ongoing maintenance and upkeep and so forth, because I don't think there's going to be any doubt that on the day in Labor Day weekend of 2023, when this park goes live, that it's going to be just phenomenal and awesome. But I think the real challenge is 5 years from then for it to be the same amount of awesome. So talk a little bit about the plans to maintain the park and keep it fresh.
Yeah, of course. You've got to, you can't build it and walk away. And we already maintain 5 miles of riverfront every day. Tom Lee Park will come with its own set of unique challenges. the good news is that we have our operations and maintenance team has been part of the planning process from the very beginning. So, this wasn't kind of a situation of, oh, let's create this really complicated thing and then figure out how to maintain it. There are a lot of things that were proposed to be put in the park that we did not put there because we chose the option that we knew we could take care of. And we learned, we built some of those skills on the projects that are already complete, like River Garden, which we already mentioned. And then in other places, the construction now has been ongoing for a couple of years. And so at the very start of the construction period, we knew exactly what we were building. We knew what skills we would need on our team to keep it in its best condition. And we've hired the team during the construction process so that we're ready to go on day one. And one of the other things that we're doing too is we have like an overlap period with some of the contractors on the project. So for example, we are keeping the landscape contractor. We're extending their contract for the first year of park operations so that they are, the people who installed it, the people who know it best are on hand to guide and teach our workers the very best way of maintaining it. So we're committed to making sure that we protect the investment that's been made in this park, and we've got the skills, we got the team necessary to do that. It will, of course, there's a financial cost to that as well, but we have built out projections. It's about a 5% increment on top of what we're already spending. So we've anticipated for that, we're budgeting for it. And of course, we are grateful to the city of Memphis, as well as to all of the corporations, individuals, and foundations who support our work on a daily basis.
Well, it certainly is going to be one of those things that 5 years from now, even the naysayers are going to say, man, what would we do without it? And isn't it wonderful? And I think it will be like the Grizzlies and AutoZone Park and everything that I can think of in the last 20 or so years, that when they were new, everybody was skeptical. But once they became established, we can't live without them. And I think Tom Lee Park is going to be that way as well.
It's funny you say that, because we have done a lot of preview tours of the park. We've taken a lot of people through it to see it. We're about 80% complete on construction, and we've probably taken, I would guess, a few hundred people through there in the past couple of months. And the number of times that I've heard some variant of, I wasn't sure what to expect, but this is so much better than what I thought, or, I was kind of skeptical about this before I came down, but now I see it's beautiful and I'm so excited. I've heard that so often. So I do think it's I would encourage everybody to mark that Labor Day weekend on your calendar. Plan to be down at Tom Lee Park for a fabulous celebration, and get your chance to experience the park in its best light, and look forward to coming back many times in the future.
The people I've talked to who, during the Memphis in May Festival, the festival goers, both at particularly, I think, with the Beale Street Music Festival, I'll be honest with you, I was, for full disclosure to everybody, I'm the mayor's representative to the partnerships board, and we were involved in lots of negotiations to try to get the park so that it benefited everybody, including Memphis in May. The thing I was most skeptical about, I'm just going to be honest, was the music fest. I could see how the barbecue would physically fit there, but I was always a little worried about music fest. But the park absorbed that crowd. They could have taken a larger crowd. Everyone that I talked to was very respectful of the investment and was very careful, with the parts that were still under construction and the new planting and whatever. But I think everybody came away from both of those weekends with just rave reviews of the elevated experience for the festival goers.
You know, I remember reading some articles before the festivals. I think Bruce Van Weingarten wrote one which included a hypothetical conversation between two people excited to see a band over on another field, and said, a little drunk, and said, and now we're going to traipse all through the landscaping. I think a lot of people were worried about the crowds trampling all over things that had newly been installed, and I don't think we saw that really at all. It felt like, you know, the attendees of the festival were excited about the space. You know, there were some changes that were made possible by the park configuration. Particularly, one of the big things I think that folks noticed, at least when I was down there, was that you can now access the river edge. You know, so the river edge used to be fenced off, and they would have an emergency vehicle lane. That now is on the west side of the park, which means attendees have a chance to actually enjoy the river view much more than was possible previously. And that was huge. You know, I saw a number of people who took selfies with the sunset, and, you know, enjoying the breeze was really great to see. And so I think that people were worried about festival goers trashing the park, disrespecting the park. They were also worried that, you know, a lot of people like to enjoy Memphis in May, like to go to those festivals, and they're worried that their experience might not be quite as good. And I think, you know, again, particularly during Music Fest, that was proven not to be the case. You know, there was ample space and great views of the bands, and seemed to be a festive occasion. There was, you know, I had some friends that came in, and they used to live in Memphis. They moved away just before construction started, and they couldn't believe the change that they experienced in that park, because it was so different from what they'd seen just a couple of years previously. So I think, you know, for those of us who, like, I see it every day, you know, you kind of get used to the change, but it's a huge transformation if you haven't seen it since the old version of the park was there.
It is very dramatic. George, I could talk about Tom Lee Park and the riverfront all day, but you've been generous with your time. I appreciate you coming on the show and being so open. And we've talked about the good and the bad. And I'm proud of the small role that I've played in it. And I think everybody who has contributed to this is just really proud of it. And we certainly appreciate your service, because as you say, you've lived it and breathed it every day, and you've felt the highs and you felt the lows. So thank you for your service to the city of Memphis.
Well, I appreciate it, Alan. Thank you for having me on today, for everything you've done for Tom Lee as well, of course, and the riverfront more generally. But it's always fun to talk about this, and I'm glad to have the chance to do so. And I hope that everybody listening, again, will come out on Labor Day weekend to celebrate the grand opening of this park all together.
You go down and see it. And if you want a little sneak preview, go to River Garden Park at the foot of Jefferson Street and Riverside Drive. And that'll give you an idea about what the Tom Lee will be. Only Tom Lee will be about 50 times larger.
Exactly.
It's a great thing. So again, thank you all for listening. If you've enjoyed this program, please give us a 5-star rating wherever you found us. Share it on social media, email it to someone you think might be interested. Try to get it out so that we can get the word out about Tom Lee Park. And I'll see you everybody down on the river on Labor Day. George Abbott is going to go make the riverfront even better, and I'm going to go get some justice. Thank you all very much.